thank you very much for coming to my talk, and thank you, Veronique, for the lovely introduction. So, as she mentioned, I'm here today to talk about effective communication in the workplace and how a seemingly very simple office desk move really showed me the complexity of the human mind. So, here's a little bit about me. So, I'm currently the Acting Executive Director for Animal Quality UK, and then otherwise the Operations Manager of the UK office as well. So that means I hold a few different hats. So one is finance, making sure that we're budgeting, forecasting, keeping on top of our money. Operations, so making sure that we're streamlining everything and being as effective as possible. And then also HR as well, so ensuring that our team are feeling empowered and satisfied and supported in the workplace. I'm an experienced project manager with around 6 years of experience in this area, and I also have a background in psychology as well, although it clearly didn't make me an expert in human psychology. I'm a vegan, and I'm also a firm believer in using effective research-led communication as a movement building tool. So here's what our session will be covering today. I'll be looking at the good, the bad, and the downright ugly forms of communication that you see, not only in our movement, but more broadly in society as well. And then I'm going to give you some actionable tips to take home, hopefully. So ways in which you can empower your staff, support them, share knowledge, strive to create a more diverse and inclusive organisation, manage large-scale collaborative projects, support positive mental health in the workplace, and also offer and receive constructive criticism. And ultimately, what it comes down to, of course, is animals. So I'll also be chatting to you about how all of this will not only improve your relationships in the workplace and help to create a better movement, but also will in turn create a kinder world for animals. So let me paint a picture for you. I work with an incredibly collaborative, supportive group of people. They're very able, very capable, and they often put up with my weird, wacky, and I think wonderful ideas. They do put up with a lot. And so I've been doing some research, and I found that carrying out a desk move where you move people around within the office space is good not only for changing their physical space, but also changing their mentality. It means that they're sitting beside somebody new, forming new relationships, mixing matching ideas. They become more productive, more innovative, more creative. Steve Jobs was a proponent of it, and so therefore so was I. And so I looked at all of this research from MIT, and I took it to my team and said, I think we should do a desk move. And so over time, I heard the kind of whisperings of dissent. They were really not up for it at all, and they basically decided to carry out a very polite revolt. And they came to me and they said, we're not having any of this, we are not doing a desk move. And so at this point I had a bit of a dilemma. Did I just force it and go ahead with it, knowing that I thought it was the right thing? Or did I stop and acknowledge that I'm surrounded by a group of very successful, very experienced campaigners who will not put up with anything? And so I admitted defeat, and I did what I should have done at the very beginning, and I consulted them. I spoke to them, and I wanted to understand, was it really that important to have this physical space, or was there something deeper rooted going on there? And I came to realise it wasn't a shift in physical space, but it was a shift in control, in autonomy, in choice. They wanted to have an influence over their workplace, and they wanted to have a say over what was happening within their environment. Unexpected changes like this can really disrupt the system. If you look online, you can actually see there are lots of different articles to show that a desk move, which you would think would be quite straightforward, is actually quite a political move, and that it causes quite a lot of uproar within an organisation. And there's even memes to show it as well, so I really should have known better. You'll be glad to know that we have since carried out a desk move, and it was very successful. I've even got a photo somewhere to prove that it did happen. But for the rest of my life, the desk move riot of 2019 will be burnt into my mind. So here's a bit of an illustration of how communication actually works. It looks far more technical than it actually is, but ultimately there are 3 parts that you need to remember. So one is that there's always a sender, somebody who has an important message that they need to convey. There's a decoding and an encoding process, so you need to make sure you're using verbal and non-verbal cues, and that you're doing it in a way that the person can then decode that. And then finally, there are barriers and influences, and this is the most important part to remember really, because a lot of your prejudices, your attitudes, your experiences, your emotions, they can all play a part in how you perceive what somebody else is telling you, and you might miscommunicate along the line because of those. So that brings me to the next point, which is what good communication actually looks like. And it really relates to this idea of decoding in a really efficient way. So if you try to decode things, you should always try to do it in a non-violent way. And what that means is, don't add a motive, don't add a label, don't add a story to it, but rather just look at the facts, observe what has actually happened, and then acknowledge how it's made you feel, acknowledge that you do have biases, you do have barriers, and propose a way forward to that person, and have a non-violent two-way discussion with them. You should also bear in mind the 5 C's. So one is to be clear, and to always give clarity in your message, so there's less likelihood that it's going to be misunderstood. Be concise. Again, if you get straight to the point, then there's less for them to try to decode, and it will probably be much more effective. Be compelling. So show your credibility, show that you have experience, you have expertise, like I did, I've carried out research, but you really need to convey that to the person. Be curious. This is what I failed to do. I wasn't curious about what their thoughts were. I didn't ask them what they were wanting out of this situation and how they felt about it. Always give people the respect to feed in their own thoughts. And finally, be compassionate, not only towards animals, but to each other. If you form a really positive, trusting relationship with somebody, then they're more likely to be on your side when really large, big changes do actually take place, and they'll trust that your decision-making process has been a good one. And then also be audience-specific. So we, for example, are working with lots of millennials. They're very civic-oriented. They're very aware of animal rights, environmental rights, social justice issues. They're known to be quite liberal, very transparent, impatient. They want immediate feedback. And so it's important that the communication style that you're using is actually working to the person that you're talking to. And on the flip side, what does bad communication look like? Well, ultimately, it's when it simply does not take place. You might think it has, but it's not being clear enough. And so it's the illusion that it's taken place. So it's important that we work with each other and that we acknowledge how each other are feeling and that we are communicating as effectively as possible so that that process of decoding does take place. We spend 80,000 hours of our lives in the workplace, and so it's really crucial that this is at the heart of everything that we're doing and that people don't become frustrated because they're not being heard. They're more likely in that case to become perhaps judgmental or to misinterpret the cues, and that can then have a domino effect on the rest of your team. So we don't want to be firefighting and being distracted from our work, we just want to be helping animals. And then ugly communication. So this is a top gripe in a lot of organisations, and so it's really important that you don't have the issue of not knowing, the left hand doesn't know what's happening with the right. It's important that you're really joined up and that you do understand. And in order to understand it and rectify it, you need to look at the causes. So one is likely to be a lack of focus. It is one thing, and it's a good thing, to give a clear job description to a person who's coming into the office, but you also need to work with them, have a detailed conversation with them, help them understand how their work will contribute to the wider success of the organisation. You need to have really positive, strong leadership and good relationships with each other, because if that deteriorates, then they won't know their clear direction and they won't know their purpose in the organisation. It can also come about because of misunderstood cues. Rightly so, we should be and want to be working with people from different backgrounds, different genders, different ethnicities, and we really want to create an environment that cultivates that. But that also can mean that we need to be very, very conscious of the terminology and the language that we're using, as well as the non-verbal cues, because otherwise there's a much higher likelihood of them being misunderstood. And then personal challenges as well. If somebody is suffering from a bereavement or from anxiety or from another personal issue, that can act as a barrier, because rightly so, they're enveloped in what's going on and they're not able to kind of decode effectively. So why does all of this actually matter? Well, poor communication can be incredibly costly. If a person is not feeling that they're valued or motivated, then they're likely to be less loyal to the organisation and feel less committed. it's more likely that they will then leave. And although that does then offer a good opportunity for new people to come in and give a new perspective, it can also be very expensive. There'll be a period when you're trying to recruit the next person and certain tasks aren't being done, and then when they do come in, there's a period of learning curve, and all of this is just a natural process in recruitment, but recruiting can come up to as much as 50 to 60% of an employee's annual salary and costs to the organisation, so it's incredibly expensive. It can also reduce productivity. So if a person doesn't know their place in the organisation or what's expected of them, then no matter how hard they try, they're never going to be able to actually achieve what you want them to if they don't know what they're trying to actually achieve. It can also result in mistakes and improper utilisation of your resources, because all you're doing is trying to resolve all of the conflicts that are going on around you, and it means that you're delaying work, that you're duplicating work, that you're spending more time on these things, and you're dealing with internal solutions rather than focusing on what you need to be focusing on. Whereas good communication can really improve all of these things. It can improve your recruitment and retention processes. People who feel they have a voice are more likely to feel that they have a positive influence in their environment, that they want to take up new opportunities, they want to thrive and flourish, and so they'll have a better understanding of their job expectations. And that, in turn, increases staff morale in general as well. Everybody feels that there's open communication, there's less likelihood of seeing conflicts, and when they do arise, they can be prevented and resolved as quickly as possible, because everybody understands they're there to personally and professionally grow together. So in conclusion, yes, I do believe that it does matter. But as a bit of a disclaimer, I would say that communicating effectively is a bit of an art form. It won't happen overnight, and you do need to put in place certain different processes or initiatives in order to make sure that your organisation is putting this at the front of everything that they do. Researchers actually carried out a meta-analysis of over 60 studies, and they found that a dream job comprises of 4 ingredients. So one is having autonomy, so they have freedom over what they're actually carrying out and how they're carrying it out. Clear tasks, so understanding from the beginning to the end exactly what's expected of them. Feedback, so they understand how they're going as they go along. And then variety as well. And you'll notice those top 3 are actually all very heavily reliant on positive communication. So if you really want somebody to love and see their job as a dream job, you really need to be focusing on ensuring these 3 parts especially are really covered so that people feel empowered and satisfied. So now that we've spoken through the theory, I'm going to go through some of the kind of actionable items that you can take back. And I'm going to chat with you about empowerment. So empowerment is incredibly important. So there was a study that was carried out that showed when empowerment levels are low, only 4% of employees are willing to go the extra mile and put in the extra effort. But when empowerment levels are high in your organisation, 67% of people are willing to go the extra mile. So it actually really means that you're getting so much more out of people if they are feeling empowered too. They benefit and you benefit. So here are some of the ways that we've been tackling it at Animal Quality. So the first one is kind of an obvious point, but it's something you should be wanting to do anyway. But take an interest in your colleagues. Every Friday I'll ask them what they're up to at the weekend. Every Monday I'll ask them how their weekend was and follow up on those things. And we'll just chat to each other about our interests and our hobbies, and I genuinely care about them. They're my friends as well as my colleagues as well. Offer opportunities for progression, so invite them to represent your organisation at conferences, and maybe create an organogram so they know the areas of progression so that they can see clear lines of how they can move up. Set targets and celebrate their successes and support them in doing that. So at Animal Quality internationally, we have objectives and key results. So we have clear objectives for the organisation and also for each person, so they can have clear milestones and they know how to achieve their end goals and how many animals they're saving ultimately. You should also regularly review your pay and benefits, so make sure that you're looking at the location, the movement, the industry, and how that's actually benefiting them, and whether it's appropriate and equal to others in this field. And then communicate that to them as transparently as you can do, so they understand that you are taking it seriously. Create a positive work environment, so no blame, no finger pointing, we're all here to just learn and flourish together. And then be transparent, so we normally have a half year and an end of year review, where we basically look at our expenses for every single project and then how that has benefited animals and how it's carried out, whether it actually met the strategic objectives of what we were aiming for it to. And then we also look forward to the next 6 months. So it really keeps us on path and makes sure that we're really focused for the next 6 months. And then I also try to schedule 2 operational catch-ups with every person every year. And that's a chance for them to talk about any resources, any support that they might need, and to just make sure that they are really thriving in their roles and that they have everything in place to be able to do their job as well as they can. I think something that a lot of organisations rightly do is they carry out exit interviews. So when a person's leaving, they'll look at why they're leaving and what could be changed. But I think it's also important to carry out stay interviews. So you're looking at why people are actually staying, what they're enjoying about their role, and how you can do more of that. There have been a lot of empirical studies to show the importance of collective knowledge, building the workplace as well. And that can lead to greater creativity, more innovation, better performance, not only for the individuals themselves, but also for the teams and the organisations too. But in the UK, a lot of organisations are not doing this well. And a recent study showed that only 25% of employees actually feel that workplace learning is being done well. So it's clearly an area that needs a lot more focus. One of the reasons that they put forward as to why it might not be going so well is that often people are left to simply passively consume new data and new information, but they're not able to contribute to it themselves. And so we've tried to tackle this in a few different ways. So one is that we host frequent weekly team meetings, and we try to make them fun as well. So when I first came in, I noticed that the weekly meetings between 5 people were going on for about an hour and a half. It was just too much time, and so I introduced an online buzzer, and so when they went past their 5 minutes, the buzzer went off and they had to stop. And it made it a bit more fun, and it did make it a bit more strict, but now that we've gone into that, we don't need to use the buzzer anymore, and we're simply keeping it to a half an hour time slot. It means we're far more effective with our time. We also chat about more upbeat things and not simply work, so we'll talk about new vegan products that have just come out that we want to go and try, and what other organisations are doing that we really aspire to be more like, or that we really appreciate and improve. We also host monthly sharing and learning sessions, so it gives our colleagues a chance to actually learn how to communicate with each other, how to present, and it also gives them a moment to really research very heavily and deeply on a certain matter. So in the past year, we were mainly focused on farmed animals because, of course, that's most related to our strategy. But now we're starting to look a bit more broadly, and we're looking at ways in which they're used for experimentation or kept in captivity, and it really emphasises that kind of core vegan message that's at the heart of our organisation. It's important that you also communicate all of the tools that you have, and so we have a centralised location, and it's really well structured so that we can share all of the different resources that we have. And also you should manage handovers really carefully as well. So if somebody's gone on holiday for a few days, make sure that they're sharing their password securely, that they have the right level of detail for the next person to take it on. And that also, if somebody leaves the organisation, you should be carrying out a management transition handover. So the current manager with the new manager and the person they're managing should all sit together and talk about what the person's trajectory has been up until now, and then what their development points will be in future, so that then each person is clearly valued and all of those conversations aren't just lost when they leave. You should also have a never event process in place ideally, or that's what we have. And it's basically if something really that should never ever ever happen has happened, then there's no blame, but instead they know exactly how to deal with it. Rather than panic and flapping, they know to step away from their laptop, come and talk to me, go and talk to another colleague, and make sure that we deal with it collectively. And then also a very important point is collaborating with other organisations. We should be building each other up in our movement and not duplicating work or delaying our resources or working around each other. We need to just be sharing and building, moving as one. As I mentioned before, it's also incredibly important that we're striving to create a genuinely diverse and inclusive organisation. So I have some facts for you. So inclusive organisations are 1.7 times more likely to be innovative leaders. 67% of job seekers say that a diverse workforce is important to them. And racially and ethnically diverse companies outperform industry norms by 35%. So clearly there's a charity or a business case here, but also I think there's a moral case. We're all here to create a more equitable society for human and non-human animals, and we all stand to benefit from that. So it's important that we're really helping everybody to be part of our movement. But there's an awful lot more that needs to be done. So in the UK, there are 14 million people with a disability, but only 3.4 million of them were actually in employment in 2017. And if you look at the top executive boards, only 12% of them are female in top organisations. So they're clearly very underrepresented. And we need to be doing so much more than we already are to try and make sure that we are encompassing everybody within our society. So here are some of the ways that we've been doing that. So I think firstly it's important to just be proud of what you have done and to acknowledge at the same time that there's an awful lot more. So for example, in the UK, we're a female-led organisation, we're a disability-confident employer, we have size 12 fonts in all of our policies to accommodate people with sight loss, and we also use non-gender pronouns and non-gendered advert vacancies as well, and everybody's also had training. But like I say, there's still so much more that we can be doing, and there's always more that we can be learning and growing, so I think just make sure that we're really mindful of that. We also recently introduced holistic impact assessments. So what this involves is, for any new project that you do, you should sit and look at how every different group in society or the protected characteristics will be affected. So all of these different communities that you're working with, how this will impact them. And if you notice that there's any way in which they might be adversely affected, then you should definitely take a greater look at that and determine whether there's a different way that you can go about it, so that everybody is really included. We also set clear objectives and we don't become complacent. We need to really keep this as a talking point for everybody. And we also utilise and expand our network. So I never try to presume what's going on in other parts of society or in other groups. They know what's best in their community, and so they could be advising us. So we really need to just make it a two-way conversation and see how we can both be lifting each other's movements up together. And what we're trying to do at the moment is create community champions in order to do exactly that. And then lastly, challenge inappropriate behaviour. If you see that someone has said something that you think may not be in line with your organisation's mission or with creating a genuinely inclusive organisation, then in a non-violent way, talk to them about it and try to tackle that problem where you can. Another area that is really important is managing large-scale campaigns. So I think this is something where communication is incredibly crucial because you're working with lots of different people across lots of different groups. They may even be international. And so I would suggest that you have a clear structure in place. So have 4 different stages. I've made these up myself, so they sound far fancier than they actually are, but I've found that these work as well as possible. So have an ideas phase. You have a project lead who you assign, and they clearly put in place a brief. They know what they want out of this, and they have clear milestones in order to achieve that. Also a planning and delegation phase, so they should identify who they want in their team, and then talk to those people and understand what their interests are, what their workload is like, what their expertise is, and then what resources you might need in order to do this well. Then an implementation phase, so actually start doing the work, and then have weekly meetings with them, take minutes, make sure everything's captured in writing because things can get really lost otherwise. And then at the end, once you have a final product, look at your initial briefing, look at your initial objectives and see whether all of your priorities have been met. And then I would say most importantly of all is always have feedback sessions. As often as you can, have a feedback session and talk about what went well, what didn't go so well, and what could be developed for the future. What needs to be put in place for future projects of this kind, and what puzzled you or surprised you along the way. As I mentioned at the beginning, mental health can really impact the way that we're communicating with each other because understandably people are really consumed by their internal issues that are going on. And so we need to have HR processes, but also mental health provisions to really make sure that they're getting the support that they need. Prioritising good mental health can really help an organisation, so a few more facts for you. It can slash annual costs by 30%. It can cut absence levels by 45%. It can reduce staff turnover by 18%, and it can increase productivity by 8%. So clearly, it's the right thing to do, and it's also good for your charity and good to use your supporters' money in the right way. So we've put in place a few initiatives to try and really tackle this. One that I really love is just the monthly happiness calendar. You can go online, you can download it, It's just for free, and it gives you a target every day to try to strive for positive mental health. So, for example, do something kind for somebody else, or spend 10 minutes meditating, and it's just really sweet, and it's a nice way to start your day. We also have team lunches, so we've tried to put a bit of a ban, if we can, on not talking about work, because it's important. I think we all really struggle to step away from the work and to give ourselves a break, but I think to be sustainable activists, you really need to be doing that. And also it's a chance for you to get to know your colleagues a bit better. Try to have a work-life balance, so do this in a way that you're not having to simply tell them, but you're acting as a good role model and you're leaving at the right time. One of my colleagues mentioned to me recently, if you simply cannot do that, then schedule your emails to go out at the right time, and at least pretend to the rest of your team that you're managing your work-life balance, so that it doesn't then have an impact on them, because it can have a real snowball effect. It can really undermine what you're doing. Hold training sessions and try to make sure that there's less stigma around mental health in your organisation. And then what we've put in place very recently is an employee assistance programme. So what this involves is we pay a small fee every month to another separate provider, and they then give face-to-face or telephone counselling sessions to our staff if they need it. And there's been some research to show that for every £1 you put into a project like that, you see a £14 return. So it's clearly actually very valuable in lots of different ways. And then my final part is just around providing and receiving constructive criticism. We shouldn't be afraid to be surrounded by people who are going to question us and who are going to tell us how it is and give a very different perspective. And as long as it's done in a non-violent way, then actually it can really help you grow as a person. So I would say again, carry out event evaluations and project evaluations. It's really important. But what I would say is just bear in mind if one person has organised that or one group of people, then make sure you're not blaming them, but instead that it's a very neutral conversation about collective action that you can take next time. Carry out an annual engagement survey, so ask your staff and give them a chance to have an employee voice so that they can then influence what's going on around them, and they can then have a say and feel much more involved, much more committed, and actually help to make the organisation perform as well as it can do. Provide constructive feedback to anybody that you might line manage. There's been some research recently from Harvard University that talks about the leadership fallacy, and I think often a lot of people will simply say, you've done it differently from how I would have, therefore it's wrong, this is how you should do it next time. And instead, that can really dampen somebody's spirits if you're telling them that they did it wrong and this is how you want them to do it. Instead, you should try to kind of sandwich it with some positive feedback at the same time. So give them some positive, give them some areas for development, and rather than telling them how they should do it next time, give them a chance to problem solve it themselves. That will really stimulate a chance for them to reflect, and a chance for them to grow and learn what their own strengths and weaknesses are without you having to tell them how to do it. And then give your supporters and your suppliers and your volunteers a chance to really voice their thoughts too. So I have quarterly calls with all of our most active volunteers and just give them a chance to feedback to us and say what they think we're doing well and what areas we could be doing things differently, or any ideas that they have. It's really nice for them to have that direct line of communication with us. So here are some of my top tips. Be kind, be inclusive, have empathy. Understand small things like desk moves are actually very, very big to some people and that it can have a really big impact. Cultivate an honest, trusting and positive culture where you can. Communicate always in a non-violent way. Be bold and be innovative. So at the moment we're doing walking meetings, we're doing standing meetings, we're just trying out different things and seeing how it sticks. And then carry out research-based actions to make sure that you're measuring what's going on. So finally, how do you know it's actually working? Well, do what I failed to do, talk to your colleagues, ask them if they feel it's working, and give them a chance to voice in the right and appropriate way. If you want to do it more formally, you could do a survey, and I would say try to keep the questions the same so that you compare it to the previous year before and you can see whether you're improving or not. Look at retention rates and sick rates, so often they're quite telling as to whether a person is feeling happy in the workplace and satisfied. And then also just look at informal things going on. Are they carrying out a work-life balance? Is it a positive one? And then are deadlines being met? Do they seem to be really engaged? Most importantly, animals are dying every second, and of every minute of every day. And this abuse really needs to end. Whether they're being exploited for experimentation, fashion, cosmetics or consumption, we really need to see a finish to this. Communication is one of the key tools in our toolbox, and if we communicate effectively with each other and share our ideas and share our knowledge, then we can bring an end to this horrific dystopian world that's around us. The animals are counting on us. Thanks.
Are there any questions from the audience to Abby? Okay, so enjoy your coffee break. Thank you,
Thank you.
Abby.